why guilt is better than shame. So shame is a dangerous weapon that we use both against others and even against ourselves. The research shows that shame is highly correlated with levels of addiction, aggression, eating disorders, and depression. Now, this shouldn't come as a surprise to most people. What may be surprising, however, is that guilt has actually been found to be inversely correlated with those things. So, what is the difference? In common parlance, the two terms are often used interchangeably. But in the psychological literature, while the difference is subtle, their implications are quite profound. So let's start with guilt. What is guilt? Guilt is a bad feeling about something you did. Guilt is when you make a mistake, you feel bad about it, you acknowledge it, and you're able to course correct. Shame, on the other hand, is about feeling bad about an aspect of yourself. Now let me give you an example. So last weekend I put off mowing the lawn. And the guilt reaction to that would be, well, that was a bad thing to do, let me fix that. Instead, the shame reaction is, I'm such a slacker. And what that does is, if I feel that I'm a slacker, if that's a part of, it's been internalized, that's a part of who I am, that makes it much more difficult to change than if the blame was just on the action itself. Another common shame trigger is eating, overeating. So Monday, when we had leftover chips and salsa from bottle cap, I kind of gorged on that for a good 5 minutes prior to lunch, prior to my Origin paleo healthy lunch. And then for a mid-afternoon snack, I went and had a pair of Pop-Tarts. So if I had a feeling of guilt at the initial chip eating, it would have stopped right there because I would have recognized that that was a bad idea. That's not healthy or helpful. And the Pop-Tarts would not have happened. So that's the distinction between them. This brings us to the concept of and the practice of shaming. Shaming is a very controversial topic, and you don't have to look very far to find anecdotes of both situations where it's worked and where it hasn't worked. So in situations where it worked, most likely what was happening is that even though the act was shaming, what the receiver heard and what the receiver felt was guilt and not shame. And that guilt prompted them to change their habits, change their ways, as opposed to shame that would make them feel worse. To quote that bastard from Austin Powers, he said, "I'm unhappy because I eat, and I eat because I'm unhappy. It's a vicious cycle." That was my best impersonation. Wasn't very good. But, so that's the distinction. So what can we do about it? Well, the first thing that we can do about shame is recognize it. initially, this is going to come in the form of recognizing it after the fact. So now I realize that my eating and then my repeated overeating of the Pop-Tarts, even though I was already full at the time, actually, was a shame reaction. The next step is recognizing it as it's happening. And that takes a higher sense of awareness. In addition to recognizing it, what also helps is talking about it. And not just talking about it to any old person that you run into, but talking about it to someone you trust to be empathetic and understanding of the situation and can help you through. Because shame is social in nature, and one of the biggest fears is that you'll share your story and then you'll get judged. The fear of being judged is one of the biggest things that keep people in shame and keep them from talking about it. So one of my challenges to you is twofold. First, to have practice awareness of shame and speak about it. Second is to be careful of your word choices when you and the distinction between shame and guilt. Great quote by the Dalai Lama is, compassion should be directed towards the actor, not the action. And I think when we're talking about criticism, the inverse is true. We should criticize the action and not the person. I think if we can make this small shift, we can pave the road to a better us and a better humanity.